listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NC F&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. Our featured spirit of the week, Copper Barrel Distillery, North Wilkesboro, the Moonshine Capital. Crafting a heritage moonshine remarkably smooth and full-flavored spirit that rivals even the most extraordinary whiskeys. Perfect to enjoy neat and in a wide range of cocktails. Check them out online at copperbarrel.com and on social at Copper Barrel. Brought to you by Key City Spirits, brand ambassadors providing North Carolina distilleries with marketing, design, and social media services. KeyCitySpirits.com. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And allez les bleus, allez les femmes bleues. I think that's correct in my, parlance. But we are here in the North Carolina downtown Raleigh studios, but we are here with three wonderful French winemakers who have been brought in by Ms. Deborah Lewis of Vintage 59. And the three winemakers with us from left to right, from Alsace, Ms. Melanie Pfister, and then from Faugeres, Ms. Francoise Ollier, and then to my right, Ms. Francoise Calvez from Chateau Coupe. Welcome, everyone.
Hello. Hello.
You'll get used to everyone's voice as we go on. So
it's packed in here. We got 2 times the Francoise as well.
That's right.
We double timed it. Yeah.
Deborah, if you could start it off by just telling us what everyone's doing here and the reason for the gathering.
So I work for Vintage 59 Imports. We import just French wine and work with 55 to 60 what we call vignerons, which are winemakers who are farmers first. And every year I do a small tour with some of the winemakers. And this year I have the 3 ladies with me, Francoise Calvez from Chateau Coupe, Melanie Pfister from Alsace, and Francoise Ollier from Ollier-Taillefer. And we just are coming to do wine tastings and dinners and events and seminars, and for them to get a taste of different cities in the United States. We'll be in Raleigh, then we fly to Kansas City, and then we fly to Savannah, and that will be our 8 days of touring.
So there are a lot of cities in this country. Where did Raleigh, Kansas City, and Savannah come into play? How did that happen?
I live in Durham, so this is my hometown.
Box
so
check.
we get to
Okay.
do that. It's a great town for us. I do a lot of business in Kansas City. That's one of my states. It's a really great wine town as far as industry knowledge. It's a great town that way. They do well for us, and they're fun. And then Savannah is always a beautiful place to bring people as far as what the United States has to offer. And it also, for me, is a great little market.
Nice.
So that's why we're there.
Now, besides the cities you're going to, you're also doing all-female winemakers. So it's the French Female Roadshow?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also the Month of Women.
Yep.
And so it's promoting not just the Year of Women, the Month of Women that way, but to have 3 winemakers who run their own domains, own their own domains, and work that way. There's a lot of great information, and there's a lot of great strength in talking about that.
Yeah.
Well, let's pass that off to the ladies here from France. I wonder, how common is it for women to run and own wineries in France?
It's still not that frequent, actually.
Okay, so probably common to the way it is here in the United States.
Yes.
Like, women are becoming more owners and winemakers of wineries, but it's still not even close to being equal.
No, for sure. During the studies, we are quite a number of female studying viticulture, enology, but taking over estates is still not
very common. Yeah. Let's just go around, since we have the 3 of you here, and you all 3 run your domain, and hear a little bit from each of you about where your domain is, your region, and how you came to be the head of your domain. So that was the voice of Melanie Pfister from the Pfister in Alsace. So you are 8th generation from your family.
Yeah.
So you are in the very north of the Bas-Rhin. And tell us a little bit about your family and exactly how you came to be the head of this domain.
Yeah, so the Domaine Pfister is a 25 acres domain, so that's pretty small, but that's average in Alsace. And so it started in 1780.
Okay, so a short while ago.
Yeah. And so my father, my parents actually had 3 daughters. I have 2 sisters, and they never forced any of us to take over. And I decided to switch to viticulture as I was 20 years old.
Okay. What were you doing before?
Studying biology at university. It's not that far away, but it's still not viticulture. And that's why you have to do this job by passion. And it's just because of that I decided to make it. And
had any other female ever run the domain in the 8 generations before you?
No.
You're the first.
Yeah.
Where do you fall?
It was a great disappointment for my grandfather.
I'll say.
To have three daughters. That when my father had 3 daughters.
Yeah.
He thought it was the end.
Yeah, he was. Well, I'm sure there's some myths in France about if you eat this before the time of conception, then you will have a son, right?
Yeah.
It's like Game of Thrones. You must have a son. But no. And where do you fall in the line of your sisters? Are you the oldest? Or are you?
I'm in the middle.
You're in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. And are they involved at all in the winery?
Not at all.
No. Okay.
So
Cool.
he took you under your wing, and under his wing, like he said, "Okay, you're going to carry on the lineage of this winery, whether female or not. Be damned." He's gonna. You took over the responsibility of the family and the business.
Yeah. So, of course, my father was pretty much convinced that none of us would take over, but he continued to work with passion, with envy, and he really liked what he made, and that probably also helped me to enjoy the job. I didn't see him working badly in bad conditions or not enjoying what he was doing.
And what kind of wine are you producing out there?
In Alsace, we mainly have white wines. We have 90% of whites. And in Alsace, all the styles are possible to do, and we mostly produce dry wines.
Yeah. People ask me, what is your favorite wine, Max? And I always say, well, it's really hard to say, but if I have to just give you an answer because you're forcing me to, for white wines, I always go to Alsace. That's my favorite, just taking all the wines from there. Sorry, no offense to everybody else.
You're a good person.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
That is the one thing you have been consistent about in the time that I've known you. It's like the one answer that I can always count on you.
And I'm a Raiders fan.
That's true too. Yeah. Outside of a lot of other things. Max is what we call what's your sign again?
I'm a Libra.
Libra.
So
so you're balanced or unbalanced. I don't know exactly where. But I just want to qualify this for a second because people think, oh well, Melanie, you were just handed this domain, but she had worked, and people who are wine fans, at a who's who of wineries, having worked and staged at Zin Umbrecht, Mayo Camazet, Cheval Blanc, Chateau Yquem, and even in New Zealand at Craggy Range. So
wow.
I would say you earned your stripes to take over the domain.
Yeah, I was lucky to learn at those places, and of course it gives you good tools to make good wines.
And many consider Cheval Blanc kind of like the crown jewel in France, right? For winemaking.
Certainly one of them.
And Chateau Yquem, Sauterne, dessert wine for all of you lays. But I can't think of anything else that has more steam in that category, right? Like arguably.
I mean, it's a who's who of a very impressive resume.
Amazing.
All right, so let's move on to the Languedoc and specifically Faugeres, this up and coming region. So Francoise Ollier, and you took over, I think in 2003. You came back to your domain, and
Yes.
and the way your scenario works is that your brother he works as the vigneron, and you work as everything. You basically handle everything else for the Domaine. Is that accurate?
Yes, I returned to the Domaine in 2003, and Faugeres, it's a small area in the south of France, and it is a family estate. And we are the 5th generation with my brother. And we have 40 hectares, about 100 acres, and we produce around 140 bottles every year.
140,000 bottles, yeah.
Yes. And we have a schist soil. It is a soil very poor, and who gives wine with a lot of flavors and fine tannins, very smooth, very silky. With a lot of richness, and my parents started bottling wines in 1976, and we are organics since 2009.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Was that intentional? You were striving to get that certification for your business?
Yes, it is very important, and I work here since 3 years now, and it is the first time for me in North Carolina, and for me it is very important to have organic wines for the business.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I have a question. If somebody never heard of Faugeres before, and Deb, you can jump in here if you want, what would be what we'd say in the United States an elevator pitch on Faugeres wines? How would you give somebody like a quick picture?
For me, Faugeres is the smallest appellation in the Languedoc, and it's also the highest. So it sits this little gem on the top of, they're not quite mountains, but they're very, very tall hills. And as Francoise said, it's schist. So it's rock. Mm-hmm. Everything has to be hand harvested. And they make primarily red wines. So you're coming there to drink red with this tiny little bit of white, which they just started being able to produce. So when you go, you get these, you want to drink wines from Faugeres for that beauty of that red, but their drinkability.
And are they like big, unctuous wines? Are they light? Like, what's the flavor profiles of these wines in that area?
The flavors, it's garrigue.
Yeah.
In French, we say garrigue. A lot of all the Mediterranean plants around the vineyard. It is in the wine, in the glass.
And most planted there is Grenache or Syrah Mourvèdre.
Alors the grapes are Grenache, Syrah Mourvèdre, Cinsault for the red wines. And Carignan, of course. It is a typical grapes of the region. And for white, I work with Roussanne and Vermentino, two white.
You call it Vermentino there, not Rolle?
Rolle, yes, it is a roll. It is the same grape.
Yeah, funny. Cool.
I didn't know that, but that's obviously Vermentino is a more Italian indigenous name, or grape, but I didn't know that you'd have Vermentino in France. But I guess that's
you see it in Provence in the
Sardinia.
South.
Vermentino come from Sardinia, and we can find in Corsica and in the south of France.
For a reference on a map, what's like, say, one of the larger cities that's close to where you're at in the Languedoc?
The place?
Yeah, Béziers or Montpellier.
At the north of Béziers, between Montpellier and Carcassonne.
Ah, yeah, Carcassonne. Yeah.
Carcassonne. Okay, so it's in the south. It's in like near the Provence, but not exactly into it. But to the west of Provence.
It is south.
Are you near
south?
You're below the Dordogne. You're not even there yet.
No.
You'd still be east of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Near Spain, as my wife would say.
Exactly. If you're on the Mediterranean, that huge crescent called the Languedoc.
Yes.
So you go basically from Marseille all the way to the Spanish border. You have that huge crescent and Faugeres, and then when we get to Francois, the other Francois, when we get to Minervois, you're looking at probably 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock if you were in the middle of the Mediterranean looking north.
Okay.
So Faugeres would be at 11 o'clock, and
Right.
You know,
But these are southern French wines, the Mediterranean climate, kind of just giving people kind of a feeling of like what these wines would generally kind of feel like or taste like if you're familiar with that area.
You have the warmth, you have all the sun, you've got ripe, delicious Grenache, you have all these other different grapes, but it's that sense of Garrigue. It's all of that laurel and that rosemary and the thyme and the olive, so you always get that sense of that salty tapenade that comes through the wines. There's a lovely word that the French use, a vin de soif or a vin de sport. These are wines that when you're thirsty, you just want to drink them.
Yeah.
They're, as we like to call...
and we have a lot of freshness because of the soil, because roots are very deep in the soil, in the schist soil.
Yeah. I think just to relate it to people that might be more novice or starting in their drinking career, you probably relate these to more to Gigondas, Côte d'Aron, Châteauneuf du Pape a little bit, but then moving a little bit more sun, essentially.
Yeah.
On a very basic level, yeah.
So, Francois, please tell us about where your winery is and kind of how you came to be at your winery.
I'm in a small village whose name is La Connette in Minervois, and it's a family history also because it's the estate is in my family since around 400 years, and when I started my studies, I'm an engineer, and my father said me, you should learn enology because you have to take care of the vines, of the vineyard and everything. I say, never. I will never do that. I will never go back to to do that job. And then some years after, I decided, okay, I can go back. I can take care of the vineyard. And the first thing I did was to change the name. Because it's very traditional in France to use the family name Domaine
to identify.
And it was Domaine de Calvez, as my family name is Le Calvez. And I say to my father and my mother, saying, I don't want to use that name because I hope one day I will have a husband, I will have children, and I want they are able to recognize and to work with me and under a special name, because it's in the family, the weight of the family, the weight of the family when you are growing and farming vineyard, it could be sometimes difficult. So it's much better. It was my opinion at this moment, and I never changed my mind about that. And the first time I went to see my banker, I said to him, I want to invest and I need some money. He said to me, no, why do you do that? You have to. It's better to go to do another job because you are a woman, and it was 32 years ago, and we were not a lot of women at this moment. In the Languedoc, we were two women.
Wait, so he was saying that you shouldn't do this job, that somebody else should be doing this job. Wow.
He said, like you are engineer, you can be better, you have no husband, so you do that. I say, okay, it's not a problem. I will do. And I did it.
How did your mother and more importantly your father take it that you didn't want to carry the name on any longer when you decided to change the name? How did your father react?
They were okay. They agree, especially my mother, because it's my family's mother. The estate is from my family's mother. And I chose the name is Château Coupe Rose. And the name of Coupe Rose, it's a traditional name in my family because 200 years ago we had a fabric of tiles and bricks, and the soil used to make the tiles and the bricks was Coupe Rose. And my ancestor owned a fabric and the name of the fabric was Coupe Rose. So my mother was very in charge of the family, of the history of the family.
Okay. So it was a matriarchal family to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah. What was was there a connotation or association that you wanted to get away from Domaine de Calvez to move on to?
To move on Château Coupe Rose?
Yeah.
Why I did it?
Yeah.
Because it's I thought it was much better to have a name, not a family name.
Not a
For
family
me,
name.
it was very important. It was the first thing I thought, because I met a lot of young women in Champagne. I remember they explained me how difficult it was to have the family name.
What's happening in the United States, of course, with the movement of women becoming CEOs and empowering and taking over family businesses, I'm wondering, maybe you guys can shed some light on how this is moving forward in France and how you're perceived there now. And I know you said it's still a small percentage, but the fact that you're all here together, you all know each other. Melanie, I know that, and the last time I saw you guys when I was, thank you to Vintage 59 for helping me get to France, you had just come back from a conference in Paris about, I think, women in wine. So tell us a little bit about how that movement is happening, especially compared to what you know about it in the United States.
So in France, the three of us, we're all members in our home regions of regional associations of women winemakers.
Mm-hmm.
Les Divines d'Alsace for me, Vinify for the Francoise. And actually nowadays in France, there are 10 regional associations. There's one in Champagne, one in Bordeaux, and so. And the 10 associations are united in one national association called Femmes de Vin. And in Femmes de Vin, we are like 250 members.
Oh, wow. So do you know the percentage of women running their domains or women enologists at this point in France?
It's really tough to find such numbers because most of the time you have you have women and her husband who are head of the estate, so it's really tricky to find statistics.
Right, like even Francoise and her brother, they're still a gentleman working there, but at least it's becoming a little bit more broad.
True.
Pardon the pun.
I think in general.
Come on. I do have a question, though. I wonder if, and this goes out to all the winemakers here, do you find there to be a stylistic change from, say, like a male point of view of how the wine is going to taste than, say, the way the female approach would be? I see some heads saying no and some heads saying yes. So I'd love to know what would be, and Melanie, we'll start with you just because I'm looking directly at you. You shake your head. Is there a stylistic difference that you approached because you are who you are as opposed to maybe the rest of your family?
I don't think so. When we do vertical tasting on my wines and my father's wines, I bet nobody would say that's the point where it's a different winemaker because
that's a lady wine.
Yeah, no, that's impossible. Impossible to say. I didn't have to make a revolution in style. So in Alsace, some people had to do a revolution in style because wines were sweet, and now the younger generation want to make a drier style. But I didn't have to do that because my father used to make dry wines, and so it's not a question of gender, not at all. It's just a question of the wine we like.
Yeah.
I think it's, I agree with Melanie, it's not a problem of the taste of the wine. It's just when you are a woman, you are more open-minded, we can say.
Uh-huh.
And that means the weight of the tradition maybe is not so heavy, it's not so difficult to support, and you can change. If you decide to change something in the way to cultivate, the way to farm, if you want to be organic, if you want to cultivate new grape variety or to try a new way to vinify, making different tastes of the wine, maybe you can do. I think it's maybe easier for us because we are able to say, okay, I'm not agree with that, I want to change. And if I want to change, I do it because I'm able to do that.
Are you meaning that maybe because you are technically a different, you're a different sex than a male, maybe if a male heir was to take on what his father had done before, he would feel more compelled to make it exactly the way daddy did and the way grandfather did, but by virtue of you not having a lineage of your mother's doing it, you're just like, I'm going to do it on my own however I want to do it.
Yeah, I think it's we are maybe I think the weight of the transmission is can be not so heavy when you are a woman, because first you are a woman, and it's it was quite difficult to say, okay, I am the winemaker, I am the owner, and I think it's easier. Sometimes I receive many people at home, and usually when they speak about wine and they ask about the vinification, they were speaking to my husband, not me.
Oh, yeah.
But I was a winemaker.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, about that is, especially with you, is your son is now taking over winemaking, and he's trying to make a lot of changes, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
he's
in the
making a lot of
vinification,
changes. He start to do natural wine. That means natural wine is the wine without any sulfites added, without yeast added also. And the day he said me, I want to do that. I said, okay, maybe you can do that, but you have to do the good wine. The most important is to make good wine. If you are succeed to make good wine, in that way you can do that. And he did it, he tried, he did different tests, and it works very well. And now he's making orange wine. I want to do biodynamic wine. We are planting a new grape varietal. And so, and always if say me, this morning was calling me to say, I want to do that plantation. It's a very unknown grape varietal. And I said, okay, if you want to do that, yes. And he's with his sister. And my daughter is also in charge of the Domaine.
Yeah. So your house is very forward thinking, and you're turning into a lot of modern technique now, from what you're saying. I would love to know, because to be honest, I don't know a lot about natural wine. And Matt, maybe you could even jump in there. I know it's very hipster cool right now to drink natural wine. But as Francoise already mentioned, you're without sulfites. What is it? Natural inoculations or natural yeasts. You're not adding anything. So are we just we're basically just grabbing a bunch of grapes from off the ground and just squeezing them and putting them in a jar and walking away? Is that how we're making natural wine?
Yeah, if you can resume, we resume that. But it's
pretty much.
Yes, you take the bunches, you put the bunches into the tank, and you wait until the fermentation starts. But as the fermentation starts, some days it needs more days before starting. That means you have to be very careful about the clean and about to control the fermentation, because you can have some yeast, bad yeast or bad bacteria starting to grow and transforming the wine into vinegar, for example. It's a very delicate process, and it takes care a lot. We need a lot of work to do that.
So these are open top fermenters, I assume. Are you letting what's like? How is the yeast getting into the natural yeast getting into the fermenters?
We have a natural yeast on the skin of the berries. That's normal. It's always like that. You have a natural yeast on the skins and natural bacteria on the skin. That's we have that in the vine. Just what's important is the selection of which first yeast start to work. And we need a special varietal of yeast starting to work to be sure that the sugar will be transformed into alcohol and without any bad taste or any bad other substance.
Right, because anything else in there would kind of shift it into vinegar, as you're saying, or just bad wine. But so what's the amount of time, let's say, if we just did it the old-fashioned way, which is kind of probably the more modern way of adding yeast, which then would initially, immediately start inoculating the wine and fermenting the wine, as opposed to doing it naturally. What's the time variance?
When you inoculate yeast, the fermentation starts after 12 hours, for example. That means that you are sure that the yeast you are starting to work is the yeast you are selected, and that is very important, because what you want to do is to make good wine. Right. That's all. You don't care if the wine is nature or not nature sometimes, but the most important is to have good wine. That's because when you are making bad wine, who wants to drink bad wine?
Well, so that's the question then. So is making, and this goes to all three of you, is making natural wine making better wine?
No, it's different taste.
It's just different tasting.
It's different taste. It's not better. It's different taste, different way to think, different way to imagine. It's also, the world of the wine is a wonderful world, because it's a very large world of the wine, and you can find so many interesting wines, and it's another way to discover this world.
It's interesting. Yeah, you got to go to your local wineries. Ask about natural wine. There's something going on there. There's a whole lot more natural wine happening. Matt?
That's a great segue, Max, where you could probably get a couple of bottles of natural wine at the Triangle Wine Company. Yeah. And actually, they have finally opened in Holly Springs. Thank you, Chris
Finally.
and Glenn, for opening up in my backyard. But the Triangle Wine Company is a great sponsor of our show. They have 4 locations where you can get great wine, beer, and other beverages. Some natural wine, I'm sure. You could talk to Glenn about that, I'm sure. They're in Southern Pines, Morrisville, Cary, and now Holly Springs. You can also go and use the Triangle Wine Company. You can go trianglewineco.com and use the NC F&B promo code for a nice discount.
NCFB promo code.
What did I say?
Just say it one more time and I'll cut. You said F&B, but that's not.
Oh, yeah. And you can go online to the trianglewineco.com, use the NCFB promo code for a beautiful discount.
By the way, just talking about patriarchal versus matriarchal societies, I love when old men make really stupid rules to keep women away from doing jobs. And I always go back to this one that I read about. It's a real thing from Japan, one of the greatest patriarchal countries of all time. Japanese chefs would not let female chefs be, or would not let females be sushi chefs. You want to know why? Because they said that women's blood runs hotter than men's blood, and by virtue of women touching the raw fish, they were cooking the fish while holding it. That is a real thing. I've heard it not from 1 or 2 different random sushi chefs. They're like, men have to be sushi chefs. It's biological. It's like listening to Ron Burgundy talk about why women shouldn't be broadcast journalists. But it's crazy, and I love how it always fits the narrative to, but by virtue, of course, men need to do this job. Clearly, it's just trying to keep job security for them and their sons. But I appreciate that you all have pushed forward, and now it's maybe not a qualifier that you're a female winemaker. You're just a winemaker. Yeah. Like, it's not a big deal.
What do you think, Deb? Because you see it over there. You're going to France at least once a year, and you see also in the States female winemakers. Do you think that it is a big deal, or you think it's just a natural course of things and how it's happening in the world globally?
I think like anything, there's an acceptance that happens, and the more people that you see and the more that you see women who are confident and who are doing the same job that men had and the same wine that you're drinking, which is delicious, which sells, everybody knows what they're doing, it just becomes more common as you see the faces that keep changing and the openness to have the generational transformation go from one daughter who becomes the mother, who then begins to pass it down. And so the lineage, where we always thought it was men, now becomes much more natural that the daughters are doing that. And the same way that the daughters are encouraged to go to viticulture and enological school and to just have that same education to be able to do both ways. Yeah. And the respect, I think, is still is continually being paid. And it's just accepted. You don't have to question it so much anymore. Yeah. As an onlooker, that's what I think. I'm sure you're questioned all the time, or often still going to the bank and still wanting to do things to prove yourself. I think we always have to work 3 times harder and faster to do the same job. But that question that Francoise Calvez got from the banker probably still happens, but less and less today, I would think. Okay, 2 things. I just want to put a bow, and if any of you have other statements that you want to make about the natural wine, but I just will say as an umbrella that natural wine does not necessarily mean it's better wine. The idea in making wine, I think, is that we want to drink a wine that's delicious. As Paul Greco, the famed Gramercy Tavern and has Terroir and Hearth in New York City, always said, wine needs a yumminess. So whether it's natural wine that you get there or you are doing some winemaking techniques, I think who cares as long as it's delicious and it's not hurting the earth and these types of things. But the other thing I think that all winemakers, and especially you guys, embody is trying to make the wine that embodies, to use that word again, the spirit of your terroir, of your region. And then
Francoise, Calvez, it's two-part with you because we actually never talked about the wines of Minervois and what they would be like. So I want to swing back around the room, starting with Francoise of Chateau Coupe Rose. Talk about the wines of your region, what they are meant to taste like, what grapes you grow. And then also, for all of you, what types of foods do you see pairing with the wines of your region and come out of your region?
We are... Minervois, it's like an amphitheater, just the back on the mountain and the front of the Mediterranean Sea, and we are we are the highest village in the area Minervois, and the vineyard is between 450 meter to 250 meter, which is quite high in Languedoc, and we are the last village producing wine, cultivating vines, because after the climate is too
warm,
too cold.
Oh, too cold.
Too cold, yes. And the main characteristic of the place we are is acidity with freshness because of the difference of temperature between night and days.
Mm-hmm.
And we have usually taste of garrigue also.
Yep.
That means all the wild grass growing naturally in the environment. And the tannins are quite firm. We have fine tannins and not strong, just well balanced with the wine. It's a good balance between everything. And we use different grape varieties, very traditional, as Syrah, Grenache, Carignan, Mourvèdre. For the red varietal, Picpoul Noir, for example, also we planted. It's quite
Picpoul
new.
Noir, yeah.
Yes, and very interesting grapes, very interesting wine. And for the white, we discover that we have a very good region to make, a very good place to produce white wines. You know, Minervois is the white in Minervois is 2% of the appellation. In my estate, we have more than 10%, and we are planting more whites because as the freshness is very interesting. We have a lot of minerality and fruity and flower taste.
Mm-hmm.
And we have different grapes as Grenache Blanc, Viognier, Marsanne, Roussanne. And we are planting Clairette, Vermentino, Rolle. Different. We try different grapes.
So I'm sure for people listening, they're saying, "Oh, well, that sounds very similar to Faugeres." But Francoise Ollier, one of the things you mentioned is the schist in Faugeres, and in Minervois, you have soils that are quite different. Yeah.
Yes, we have mostly it's clay and limestone.
Clay and limestone, yeah.
Very, very stony. And you know, I have a very good friend, which is Claude Bourguignon. It's a very nice and very good man making research about the terroir and about the soil. And I met him some long time ago, and he explained me the effect of the terroir. And we said, when you speak about terroir, we have different terroirs. We are 3 winemakers around the table. And even, for example, with Francoise, we have the same grape varietal. Our terroir is totally different.
Right.
That means what is the terroir effect is the composition of the soil and the subsoil, the mineral we have in our place. It's very special and unique from that soil. And all the work we do, Francoise work in the same way. We do organic. That means we don't put any chemical fertilizer, for example. Just we improve the activity of the soil. We improve the microbial activity, giving more mineral free for the root, because you know the plant doesn't eat any food, doesn't eat a protein or lipid or things like that, just water and single minerals. That means that these minerals are making available by the microbes and the worms and the bacteria. They are free and available for the roots, and the roots take through the sap, take this mineral and give the minerals going to the grapes and the bunches, and then you have a different taste, because a taste is made with a different. It's a chemical molecule, and the chemical molecule will be different according to the mineral you will have.
Yeah, from ground to glass.
Exactly.
Yes.
So speaking of taste, so what can we expect to eat if we come to Chateau Coupe Rose and somebody is cooking a feast? What would we look to eat with your wines and regionally specific?
Yeah, what's on the menu?
I would love to tell you a cassoulet, but no.
No?
That's
Okay.
a legend. We don't do that. Sometimes we can do, but it's not what we used to eat. No, we eat a lot of different vegetables, and maybe what is different for your cook is the way to prepare. Maybe we do a lot by steam, a lot of vegetable by steam, and we do a lot of grill. We barbecue. We have a lot of lamb because of the place where we are. People grow lamb. We eat a lot of lamb and some pork, but not too much. And usually,
So grilled lamb, grilled vegetables sounds
I
excellent.
would tell
Steamed
you
vegetables.
some
Sounds very
Steamed.
California-like to me.
lamb, cutlet lamb,
Yeah.
with some tomatoes or eggplant. It's good.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds healthy.
France.
Nice. As we continue on, so what about you, Francois? What kind of food are we doing with your region? That kind of gives a good idea of like the wine.
With red wines, I love lambs, red meats, of course, and with white, all grilled fish and cheese. I love cheese with Allegro, with the white. White, it is a blend of Roussanne and Vermentino, and with low acidity but a lot of minerality.
Yeah.
And it is very, very nice with cheese.
Any specific type of cheese, or is there a specific cheese to your region?
Goat cheese.
Goat cheese, yeah.
Perhaps.
Okay.
It is
But-
very nice.
But it's a different goat cheese than you would get in the Loire Valley, right? I mean, it's...
Yes, fresh goat cheese.
Okay.
Yes, but it is very nice also with Conti.
Okay.
Yes,
This.
I love that. Oh yeah. And lastly, just because we're getting close to the end here, Melanie, would you tell us a little bit over Alsace? Completely different region, of course, and it's much cooler there. And I don't know about you, Deborah. You'd mentioned that the regions that you were at, Francois, you were up on the top of a tall hill. But how does that range to Alsace, which I know is a very mountainous area? So elevation-wise, are you significantly higher, or
We are like 240 meters high. So
what's a meter? I'm just kidding.
Actually, all the Alsace vineyard is along the Vosges mountains, and the soils are really different from one place to the other.
Yes.
I'm in the top north on limestone, very pure limestone subsoil, and that gives very mineral taste to all the wines we craft. And so what we eat in Alsace has a strong German influence. We eat a lot of pork. Lamb is not a traditional thing here, and all the wines based on freshness, on acidity, just cut the kind of fatness of the pork. And our main dishes are choucroute, sauerkraut, Beckehofer, things where you need freshness, and dry Riesling, mineral wines.
And they make also like the pork into all different types of sausages, right?
Yeah,
that
yeah,
really
yeah.
pair well with the wines. And then there's I can't remember the name of it, but it's almost like a pizza. Like there's an Alsatian style bread
Yeah.
that you do.
It's what we call a flammekuche,
Okay.
tarte flambée.
Tarte flambé.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. And what traditionally goes on that?
Light white,
Yeah.
like a Pinot Blanc, or light red Pinot Noir that we have.
Sounds awesome.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
We got to book our trip again. So
Yeah.
I was in France for 30 days last summer in June with the family. And Matt, you just got back. You were there for 10, 12 days, something like
10
that?
days in February, yeah.
Yeah. France. It's what's it's what's for dinner.
Well, thank you all for being here. This was so educational, and thank you for being such strong female personalities. I should just say just strong personalities, great winemakers, and pushing this forward. And thank you for coming to North Carolina. So for all of you out there, search these wines, Chateau Coupe Rose, Ollier-Taillefer, and Domaine Pfister. You will drink very merrily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. By rating us online, you're helping others to discover our show. The magic of SEO puts the ice in our shaker. Follow us on all platforms at NCFB Pod.